Of all the characters that were turned into a kid in Dragon Ball Daima, Master Roshi is by far the most unique, and I do have to admit that it still feels kinda weird saying Dragon Ball Daima, but it's something that we're all gonna have to get used to. Now, one observation that you guys have made is dealing with Master Roshi's hair. That an issue with Kid Master Roshi is the fact that he's still bald, because when Krillin first shows up on Master Roshi's island, he talks about the fact that people who pursue mastery in martial arts all have their heads shaved, when Goku was saying that Krillin's head looks like a pachinko ball, which could obviously be translated differently depending on what version of Dragon Ball you're reading. However, Master Roshi responds to all of this by saying that he's actually just bald. And later on in the 21st Martial Arts Tournament, when Roshi was talking to Nam about his hidden identity, Roshi talks about the fact that he doesn't have hair and he's just using a wig. But when you look at the anime flashbacks of Master Roshi, you will once again see that Master Roshi, when he was younger, did in fact have hair, which still feels silly that we're even talking about Master Roshi's hair on a YouTube video. The Dragon Ball community has an issue with the hair. I don't care, but that's the conversation as far as that's concerned. One of the things about Master Roshi becoming a kid again is that on one hand it feels kind of uncomfortable if you think about who Master Roshi actually is. If Master Roshi was just a normal Dragon Ball master that trains his students and lives peacefully on his island, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But when we consider the extremely lecherous nature of Master Roshi, this is where things change, because on another hand, we are going to have to start reevaluating the moments that Master Roshi has. Dragon Ball had effectively retired Roshi and only brought him back and resurfaced his character for cameos, flashbacks, and just to have some slice of life and fun. His character didn't really have a serious impact on the Dragon Ball universe other than just giving some stories that would help explain things. Apart from this, he was just mostly known for his comedic perverted scenes. But now that Master Roshi's a kid, how exactly do you play around with the perverted nature? Do you basically just stick your finger up at Dragon Ball fans and make him not perverted at all to kind of follow the younger audience theme that you're trying to follow? Do you just make Master Roshi a background character that nobody cares about and you completely omit his perverted humor for the younger audience that you're trying to attract with this new show? Or do you try to find a creative way of illustrating that he still is like that, but you do it in a way that younger audiences wouldn't understand, but the OG Dragon Ball fans would understand, which is something that Disney does very often when making adult references in their humor. And some of you have pointed out that one way you can utilize the younger Master Roshi is to use his kid state as pure innocence for perversion. For example, if there's an attractive woman that sees Master Roshi, she might just look at him as a cute little kid and might hug him and give him a little kiss. Now, this would actually be really funny because of the fact that we understand how Master Roshi really feels about her, but because he's a kid, she treats him differently with adoration. And to satisfy the Dragon Ball audience, you can have Master Roshi reacting to this in a very, very positive manner, because he can't really be the same character that he was when he was older. Because having a kid that's a pervert is totally different visually from having an old man that's a pervert. But the reason why this is unlikely is that the majority of Master Roshi's perverted humor is always fixated on core characters that the Dragon Ball story has built up over years. In earlier Dragon Ball, this was always focused mostly on Bulma and then later on Launch. And while we might occasionally have moments where Master Roshi is hitting on a mermaid, literally, when he was asking Goku to go scout out a beautiful woman to come to his island, the majority of Master Roshi's humor has always been with characters that we were familiar with, which, in this particular case, would change the dynamics of everything because of the fact that if all of the core characters are now kids again, well then how do we really translate Roshi's humor this time around? Because now, Bulma's a kid, Chi-Chi's a kid, and even Android 18 is a kid. Now, keep in mind that Android 18 lived on an island with Master Roshi for years, and Master Roshi was able to make it out alive, which meant that somehow, some way, he kept things under control. Which we could imagine if you have Android 18 living on your island, that might be a difficult task for you to handle. And there are also some side stories of fanfiction that go a little bit deeper, and by deeper I mean really deep, into the relationship that Android 18 and Master Roshi had in privacy. But with how modern censorship works, it wouldn't be shocking if they completely nerfed Roshi's personality in addition to also making him a kid again. But going back to the point that we were discussing earlier, where all of the main characters are now kids, this creates a very obvious problem with Master Roshi where, for very clear reasons, the humor wouldn't really hit the same punches that it did seeing Master Roshi try to interact with these characters as they're all kids now. Especially when you think about the fact that because he's still Master Roshi and has Master Roshi's mind, this makes it even creepier when you think about the fact that his victims are now all underage. And even though they're still technically adults in their mind too, physically and visually it would be wrong. But apart from just perverted humor, the other thing about Master Roshi is that Master Roshi is a character that is designed to be old. When you think about the fact that he's outlived pretty much everybody, and when you look at the fact that Master Roshi is in all likelihood going to outlive the entire Dragon Ball cast, considering the fact that even in Dragon Ball Super he took herbs to extend his lifespan, and by the original writing he's supposed to be biologically immortal, in the sense where as long as something doesn't kill him, he's still going to be alive, he's still going to be sticking around, which is one of the reasons why it's very interesting for fans to theorize what happened to Master Roshi at the end of Dragon Ball GT, because at the end of Dragon Ball GT, he and Krillin were both old men on his island, and then we have a 100-year time skip where the narrator says all of the previous characters besides Pan had died, but when you consider the fact that Roshi shouldn't be dead, and he was pretty much on the verge of outliving Krillin the last time we saw him, it would be interesting if the story actually fleshed more of that out. But seeing Master Roshi turn into a kid again is definitely going to be a refreshing change for Dragon Ball fans, and for those of you who don't know, Master Roshi's design is actually based off of God from Dr. Slump, which is of course Toriyama's other work, and if you can see these images here, you can clearly see the inspiration that was given to Master Roshi, and when you consider the fact that God is immortal and Master Roshi was stated to have been immortal in early Dragon Ball, it does go to show what Toriyama thought about a Roshi-esque character having extreme longevity. But apart from the other characters, Master Roshi turning into a kid again is actually good for him in multiple ways. Master Roshi is so ridiculously old that he spent the overwhelming majority of his life being old, and whatever life he was going to have into the future, that was all going to be spent being old. And using extremely basic math to illustrate this, let's say you're 600 years old, and 30 of your years of life have been youth. And then we can add another 30 years to that and saying young-ish to middle-aged, which would take you to about 60 years old. Using those metrics, you've only not been old for 10% of your life, which for Master Roshi's case would be extreme torture. So among all other characters in Dragon Ball, Roshi would definitely be the happiest to be turned young again, and to relive his youth with all the memories that he had of his older days. And that's a question that a lot of us probably think about. If you can take your older, more mature mind and transport back to when you were younger, what kind of things would you do? What kind of things would you participate in? How much more successful would you be in life with all the memories that you have of your older self? In Master Roshi's case, when he grows into an adult naturally, he would have a much better chance of attracting the kind of women that he wants to attract. And from a fighting perspective, if Master Roshi is able to maintain his power going back to a younger age, he would be far more powerful when he enters his physical prime after he ages, because we completely forget the fact that Master Roshi is theoretically weaker than what he's capable of being because of the fact that he's old and way past his prime. Now, of course, using Dragon Ball Super scaling is rather bizarre because Master Roshi got so powerful that he was even stronger than Super Saiyan Blue level, which we already discussed in a whole other video if you want to hear that. But even if we go with his original writing as to how strong he was supposed to have been in early Dragon Ball and even late Dragon Ball, he'd still be far stronger becoming younger again. So even though Master Roshi is by far the most unique character to be turned into a kid, considering the nature that Master Roshi is more of a side character and the show is not going to focus on him, most of what you heard in this video is probably never gonna happen. But it was fun to think about it, to talk about it, and to share it with all of you on YouTube.